I am going to show you how to install and some of the features of the custom UI I've been working on. So to start with, we have the zip file that you should get from Discord in my downloads folder. I'm going to go ahead and move this file to a temporary folder so I can extract it. I'm going to go ahead and extract it here, which should give me these three elements. Now, this first one, G24 UI, is the custom UI itself. You can go ahead and move this to your ZBrush install, C startup, user interface layouts, and then go ahead and paste it right here. The second file is the plugin. The UI needs this plugin in order to get all of the custom buttons that are in the UI. So we take this plugin, we're going to move it to wherever you've installed ZBrush. We're going to go to Z Startup, and we're going to go to the zplug64 folder, which is where all the other plugins are located. And you just go ahead and paste that right here. Now, the third file is optional, but it is the custom brushes that you can see in the UI. And if you want those to show up, you're going to need this brush presets file. So I'm going to head and cut this, go to the ZBrush folder. Now, some tutorials will tell you to put custom brushes in the data folder. Don't do that. Go to Z Startup, and then go ahead and paste it right here. And it's going to combine with this brush presets folder to put all the brushes into the custom UI. Now, that should have the custom UI installed. You'll need to restart ZBrush and then select it by rifling through the Load Next User Interface up here on the top right. Now, as for what the UI does, a lot of it right now is trying to figure out what brushes do specifically. To show an example, this is the Z clay brush. It's the regular clay brush. It's just been recalibrated for the touch sensitivity of my tablet, but otherwise it's a normal clay brush. And if you look, it just functions like a normal clay brush. We also have the clay buildup brush. It's the same deal, and you see it like this. It builds up. It's a clay buildup brush. So we have clay buildup. But you might notice that when switching between the two, I managed to turn it off the last time that I recorded this. Whoops. This is clay buildup. This is ordinary clay. And as you might notice when we switch between the two, the difference is this build button right here, the build up button. If I take the ordinary clay brush and I press the build up button, I can build up just like the clay build up brush. This is functionally what the difference between the two are. And this doesn't have to work on just the clay brushes. It can work on other brushes. It doesn't work on all of them. I'm not quite sure why it works on some and doesn't work on others, but you can experiment using that button. Another interesting one that I use a lot is if I take the inflate here, right? And let's say I want to inflate the muscles on the inside of his arm right here, around the side of his body. If I go ahead and do that, because the Z intensity is a little high. If I go ahead and do that, you can see that it inflates, but it also inflates the nearby arm, right? It inflates this right here. And I don't want it to do that. I just want to inflate the side of the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this topo button. This is the mask topological button. And if you use the move topological tool, you'll know that this is what the move topological brush does, is it enables this topological masking option. So now if I go back and I do it again, you'll see that the side of the body inflates, but this arm right here isn't inflating. It's just the side of the body, which is really useful for close nearby topology. Now, with all of these custom buttons, if you hover over the button, in the top left of the screen, it doesn't like doing this with my pen, because the pen likes to move the cursor whenever it leaves the screen. Alright, we're just going to leave it on top of the thing. Alright, here we go. So, if you look at the top left, there's going to be a short description of what this button does, right? In this one, it's the mask by polygroups. And, oh yeah, it's gone away again. Next to it is a semicolon, and then it's brush, auto masking, mask by polygroups. And what this is, right? This brush, auto masking, brush by polygroups is where you find the original button that this is linking to, right? So if I go to brush, scroll down, go to auto masking, and then right here you see is the mask by polygroups. This is what this button is doing, right? If I click it, I go back and look at the brush, you can see that it's set mask by polygroups to 100. And if I unclick it, it's unset mask by polygroups to 100. So all of these buttons, if you hover over them, preferably with a mouse because it likes to be finicky with the pen, you'll get the short description of what this is, usually the long name of it, and then brush, depth, mask, or whatever pathway it is for you to find the original button in the original ZBrush UI. Now, I also have a select few buttons that operate with macros. For example, the process of deleting masked, let's not do this. The process of deleting masked points. I go ahead and mask some points. In order to delete these mask points, I have to invert the mask. I have to go to visibility, hide points, and then I have to go to geometry and then delete hidden, which is a pain. So instead, you can use this DM button up here, right? Delete mask button. And this is what I'm talking about, where you can map multiple functions to a single button. Is now if I press this, it just goes ahead and deletes the unmasked area. Let's see what else was there. Okay, so I have a custom right-click menu, or well, spacebar menu. The original one looks like this. This right here, this custom menu, it has custom increments on the sliders. For example, like the focal shift right here, it increments by 25 instead of the ordinary 1. And that's because usually whenever I'm messing with focal shift, I want to shift it up or down quite a bit in order to get a different effect. I don't usually want a fine amount. Some sliders, like Z intensity, where you often want a fine amount, the slider itself is untouched, but the buttons to the side of it, increase or decrease it, will increase or decrease it by a larger amount. So you can move from upper and lower values much more easily. And this doesn't affect the ordinary right-click menu at all. That still functions perfectly normally. And what I was talking about with the brush size function in the Discord chat was that if you go to, if you want to increase or decrease the brush size with a hotkey in regular ZBrush, you go to the Z plugin menu, and then you go to miscellaneous utilities, and then you have these up and down brush arrows, and you get a flat brush increment, right? And so what this does is it'll always increase or decrease your brush size by 15. But if your brush size is really small, right, like this, and then I increase the brush size, it's going to increase the brush size, it likes to lag. It increases the brush size by quite a bit. If I can get the button to work. It increases the brush size by quite a bit. And on very large brush sizes, if I increase the brush size, you can't even tell. The increment's too small in order to increase the brush size anymore. So what I'm talking about with controlling the brush size by a function is that if you have it bound to a hotkey, you can increase or decrease instead of by a flat amount, by a percentage of the current brush size. And this makes a lot more sense if I show it to you like this. So here's the brush size, right? And if I'm making the brush size smaller, you can see that it moves by a small amount, right? And it gets smaller and smaller amount, the closer and closer it gets to 0. But as I move the brush size up, the amount that it changes increases, right? Where at large values, it increases by a huge amount, because that's usually what you want it to change by. So you get detail where you want detail, and you get less detail where you don't. And technically, this is increasing the brush size by 15% of itself, or decreasing it by 15% of itself every time that you press the button. Makes it a lot more intuitive to use. It's really complicated to explain, but really it just looks like this. It lets you increase or decrease the brush size in a way that makes a lot more sense. So one of the things I wanted to mention before, so whenever I use these buttons, you'll notice that all of these custom UI interface elements update automatically. But this has to do with how I have my auto hotkey set up, which isn't something I included, because it's specific to how my computer works. So whenever you switch brushes, you may have to hit this load button in order to get all of the user interface elements to load. This little load button right above the brushes. You can bind this to a hotkey. I can even show you how to set it up like I have mine set up if you'd like, but it's specific to your system. I'd have to, show you how to do it. I think that's it. So really what this thing is all about right now, I'm still working on it and getting a whole bunch of stuff on here, is really just like whenever you change a brush, you want to know how it changes. Why does it work the way it does? And be able to experiment with different effects. And that's really what this jambalaya up here is all about. Okie dokie.